Okay folks, buckle up, because tonight on the Mysteria Archive, we go from space science to cosmic conspiracy real fast. What if the moon isn't just a rock, but a regulator quietly shaping life on Earth? Yeah. Stay with me and get ready for a wild ride. The machine in the sky. What if the moon isn't just hollow? What if it's active? Not a relic, not debris, not a dead satellite drifting through space, but a functioning system. Because here's what we know. The moon stabilizes Earth's axis. It controls the tides. It slows our planet's rotation. It makes total solar eclipses possible with almost impossible precision. It synchronizes biological rhythms across oceans, forests, even the human body. That's not passive, that's regulatory. For billions of years, it has hovered at exactly the right distance, large enough to matter, close enough to influence, stable enough to endure. Too stable, some would argue. And when NASA deliberately crashed modules into it during the Apollo missions, the moon rang. Not metaphorically, physically. Seismic reverberations that lasted far longer than expected. Scientists have explanations. Dry rock, rigid structure, low damping. But still, it rang. And here is where the story shifts. Tonight, we're asking something far more unsettling than whether the moon is hollow. We're asking, if it is hollow, what is it doing up there? Because if the sky above us is not just scenery, if it is infrastructure, then we're not just orbiting a rock. We're living beneath a system, and systems are built for a reason. Okay, deep breath. Now, we're not saying the moon is a giant thermostat with a settings menu. Well, not yet. Everything I just said is based on real, measurable lunar science. Axis stabilization is real. Tidal influence is real. Rotation slowing is real. The ringing moon experiment is documented. And the leap we're exploring is not science fiction, it is interpretation. And interpretation is where conspiracy theories are born. So, grab your tinfoil hat, you're going to need it tonight. Now, let's talk about why Earth might actually need the moon more than we realize. The stabilization device. Imagine Earth without the moon. Not darker nights, not fewer eclipses. Chaos. Planetary scientists have modelled what happens when a terrestrial planet lacks a large stabilizing moon. Over millions of years, actual tilt begins to wander, slowly at first, then dramatically. Earth currently tilts at about 23.5 degrees. That tilt gives us seasons, predictable, stable climate cycles that agriculture and ecosystems depend on. Without the moon's gravitational pull acting like a gyroscopic anchor, Earth's tilt could shift wildly between 0 and 60 degrees over geological timescales. And that means extreme climate swings, ice caps forming near the equator, tropical heat near the poles, massive ecological resets. Mars, for example, has no large moon. It tilt shifts chaotically. Its climate history reflects that instability. But Earth does not wobble like that. The moon's gravity dampens those oscillations. It stabilizes the spin axis like a weighted flywheel on a mechanical engine. This stability is not trivial. It is foundational. Long-term climate stability allowed complex life to evolve. Oceans remained liquid. Weather systems developed patterns. Biological evolution had continuity. If the moon were smaller, this effect weakens. If it were farther away, the stabilization decreases. If it were absent entirely, Earth becomes climatically erratic. Instead, it sits in almost the exact orbital position required to moderate chaos. Coincidence? Well, most astronomers say yes, the result of an ancient impact event 4.5 billion years ago. But from another perspective, it looks less like debris and more like a counterweight, a planetary stabilizer. And stabilizers are not decorative, they are functional. So this is where things get interesting. Everything in this section is mainstream planetary science. The moon absolutely stabilizes Earth's tilt. That's not fringe, that is physics. The question is not whether it stabilizes Earth, it does. The question is why we happen to have such a large moon compared to our planet, when most rocky planets do not. Astronomers say we got lucky. Conspiracy thinkers say we got engineered. I'm not choosing sides yet, I'm just pointing out that if Earth is a spinning top, the moon is the finger keeping it from falling over. And that feels important. The evolution accelerator. Now, let's go deeper. Long before cities, before agriculture, before mammals, Earth was ocean and rock and chemical chaos. And in that chaos, something extraordinary happened. Life began. One of the leading hypotheses for how life formed involves tidal pools, shallow stretches of water repeatedly flooded and exposed by the moon's gravitational pull. Those cycles of wet and dry created chemical concentration gradients. Molecules were forced together, heated, cooled, mixed, repeated, over and over again. The moon did not just move water, it created rhythm. Modern marine biology still runs on that rhythm. Coral reefs spawn in sync with full moons. Grunion fish time their reproduction to lunar cycles. Even microscopic plankton migrate according to lunar illumination. And then there is us. The average human menstrual cycle is roughly 29.5 days, the same as the lunar month. Scientists debate whether this is coincidence or evolutionary echo, but the overlap is striking. Circadian rhythms are influenced by light. No surprise there, but studies show that human sleep patterns subtly shift during full moons, even in controlled environments. Is that proof of control? Well, no, but it is evidence of influence. The moon shapes tides. Tides shape chemistry. Chemistry shapes biology. Biology shapes consciousness. Follow the chain back far enough, and the moon is there at the beginning. So here is the uncomfortable thought. What if life on Earth did not simply adapt to the moon? What if it emerged because of it? Because an object that large, that close, exerting that much gravitational force is not just scenery, it is participation. Okay, important reality check. Everything about tidal pools and early life chemistry is legitimate scientific theory. The moon absolutely drives tides. Tides absolutely influence ecosystems. Now, the menstrual cycle connection? That's debated. Correlation does not equal cosmic programming, but here is what makes this interesting. If you were designing a planet to encourage complex life, you'd probably want stable cycles, predictable rhythms, repetition. And the moon provides that. Does that mean it was installed like a cosmic metronome? Well, probably not. But does it make you look at it differently? Yeah, I think it does. The planetary brake system. Now, imagine Earth 4 billion years ago. It was spinning much faster. A day may have lasted only 5 or 6 hours. That means ferocious winds, massive Coriolis forces, hyperactive weather systems. But over billions of years, something slowed it down. The moon. Through tidal friction, the gravitational pull between Earth and the moon transfers angular momentum. Earth's rotation gradually decreases. The moon slowly moves away at about 3.8 centimeters per year. Now, this is measurable. Laser reflectors left by Apollo astronauts confirm it. The slowing is subtle, milliseconds per century. But over geological time, those milliseconds reshape a planet. Longer days mean calmer atmospheric circulation, more stable temperature distribution between day and night, more predictable climate systems. In other words, habitability improves. Without the moon acting as a brake, Earth would still rotate faster. Climate systems would be more volatile. Instead, we exist in a 24-hour rhythm that supports biological balance. And here is where the metaphor becomes uncomfortable. Brakes are mechanisms. They regulate speed. They prevent runaway motion. The moon is not just orbiting us, it is interacting with us, extracting energy from Earth's rotation and converting it into orbital distance. Most scientists describe this as natural celestial mechanics, and it is, but from a systems perspective, it looks like regulation. A planet spinning too fast, a satellite slowing it down. Not aggressively, gradually, patiently, over billions of years. That's not dramatic, that is maintenance. Alright, this one sounds dramatic, but again, this is real physics. Tidal friction is textbook material. The moon absolutely slows Earth's rotation, no mystery there. The conspiracy flavour comes from interpretation. Now, if you zoom out and think of Earth like a giant engine, the moon does look like a governor valve. It prevents excess spin. Now, nature produces elegant systems all the time without intention. But when multiple stabilizing effects stack up, people will start asking questions. Not crazy questions, just curious ones. If it walks like a regulator and acts like a regulator, is it just coincidence? Or are we seeing design where there is only gravity? That is the tension. The resonance theory. In 1969, and again in the early 1970s, NASA performed an unusual experiment. After Apollo missions deployed seismic instruments on the moon's surface, mission planners intentionally crashed spent rocket stages into it. They wanted to measure how the moon responded to impact. What happened surprised them. When Apollo 12's lunar module ascent stage struck the surface, the moon vibrated for nearly an hour. When Apollo 13's upper stage impacted, reverberations lasted for over 3 hours. The scientists described it as the moon ringing like a bell. Now, the official explanation is straightforward. The moon is extremely dry. It lacks water and tectonic activity. That makes its crust rigid and less capable of damping vibrations quickly. But here is where interpretation enters the story. Seismic data suggested layered internal structures. Some researchers in the 1970s speculated about low-density regions beneath the crust. Soviet scientists Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov even proposed in a now famous paper that the moon could be theoretically hollow. Their artificial satellite hypothesis was Fringe, but it was published. And mainstream science rejects the idea of a completely hollow moon. Current models support a small core, mantle and crust. Yet, the ringing phenomena remains part of historical record. And resonance is a powerful concept. A hollow cavity amplifies frequency. A shell reflects vibration. Musical instruments rely on resonance chambers to project sound. So, here is the layered thought. What if the moon is not empty, but structured in a way that enhances resonance? What if its internal composition allows it to act as a gravitational and vibrational moderator? Not a spaceship, not a fantasy fortress, but a tuned object. Because when something rings, it is not silent, it is responding. Alright, let's ground this. The moon ringing like a bell is a real NASA quote. The seismic data is documented. The hollow moon paper by those Soviet scientists exists, but modern lunar science does not support a giant empty cavity inside. Current evidence points to a differentiated interior with a small core. So why bring this up? Well, because the resonance idea is intriguing. Even without being hollow, the moon's dryness makes it uniquely reactive to impact waves. Now, does that make it engineered? No. Does it make it interesting? Absolutely. And interesting is where stories begin. The eclipse calibration problem. Now, look up during a total solar eclipse. For a few brief minutes, the moon perfectly covers the sun. Not partially, not approximately, perfectly. The sun is about 400 times larger than the moon. It is also about 400 times farther away. That proportional coincidence makes them appear almost exactly the same size in Earth's sky. Astronomers call it a coincidence of scale, but it is a rare one. In the distant past, the moon was closer to Earth. It would have appeared larger, producing longer total eclipses. In the distant future, the moon continues drifting away. Total eclipses will no longer be possible. The moon will appear too small to fully cover the sun. And we exist in a narrow window of cosmic time where this balance occurs. Is that meaningful? Well, from a scientific standpoint, it's simply orbital mechanics. From a symbolic standpoint, it is extraordinary. Total eclipses have shaped human history. They have halted battles, inspired myth, advanced science, even helped confirm Einstein's theory of general relativity. The alignment required is precise. Sun, moon, Earth. A celestial calibration event. Most planets with moons do not experience this kind of proportional symmetry. So here is the question. Why does Earth have a moon that appears almost perfectly sized to match the sun from our perspective? Is it chance? Probably. But when you layer that coincidence onto stabilization, tidal influence, and rotational braking, the pattern begins to feel intentional. Not proven, but provocative. And that is where the story tightens. Okay, the eclipse thing is wild, but it's not supernatural. The 400 to 400 ratio is an observational coincidence. There's also no known physical law that required it. And yes, we live in a very specific era where total solar eclipses are possible. That does not automatically mean someone fine-tuned the sky for dramatic effect. But here's why it sticks in people's minds. When multiple rare alignments stack together, humans instinctively search for meaning. Sometimes that meaning is just probability playing out, and sometimes it becomes mythology. The moon sits right at that intersection. The behavioural effect. For thousands of years, humans have blamed strange behaviour on the full moon. The word lunacy comes from lunar. Police departments have reported busier nights during full moons. Emergency room staff sometimes claim shifts feel heavier. Sleep researchers have observed subtle disruptions in sleep cycles, during full lunar phases, even when subjects are unaware of the moon stage. Now, here is the important part. The data is mixed. Some large-scale studies find no statistically significant increase in crime or hospital admissions. Others detect small but measurable changes in sleep duration and melatonin levels during full moons. Animal behavior is more clearly influenced. Many species use lunar light for navigation and reproduction. Coal spawning synchronizes with lunar cycles. Predators adjusting hunting patterns based on brightness. Light affects biology. That's not controversial, but the moon does more than reflect light. Its gravitational pull shifts oceans, and the human body is mostly water. Now, does that mean the moon directly controls human behavior? Well, no credible scientific evidence supports that claim. But influence and control are not the same thing. If the moon shapes tidal forces that sculpt ecosystems, and if light exposure shifts hormone production, then it participates in biological regulation. The question becomes philosophical. Is the moon merely part of Earth's environment, or is it a regulator woven into our biological clockwork? Because when millions of organisms adjust their behavior in sync with a distant object, it begins to feel less like background scenery and more like a metronome. And metronomes do not dictate the music, they set the tempo. Right, well, before anyone writes to NASA accusing the moon of mind control, let's slow this down. There's no solid scientific evidence that the full moon makes people act wildly. The crime spike idea is largely anecdotal. But sleep studies have shown subtle effects, and animals clearly respond to lunar cycles. So, here's the balanced take. The moon influences environments. Environments influence biology. Biology influences behavior. That's not mystical, that is systems thinking. The leap to control is where conspiracy lives. But the influence itself? That's very real, and influence is enough to make this interesting. The containment hypothesis. Now we widen the lens. The moon stabilizes Earth's tilt. It regulates tides. It slows planetary rotation. It influences ecosystems. And layer those together and you see a pattern: stability, predictability, moderation. Without the moon, climate models suggest Earth's actual tilt could shift dramatically over long time periods. That means extreme seasonal swings, severe climate instability. Without tidal friction, Earth would spin faster. Weather systems would behave differently. Without strong tides, coastal nutrient cycling would weaken. The moon reduces volatility. That much is physics. But here is the speculative edge. What if its role is not just supportive, but limiting? Limiting how far Earth systems can swing, limiting chaos, maintaining a narrow band of environmental stability. From a mainstream perspective, this is the fortunate result of massive impact early in Earth's history. From a fringe perspective, it resembles containment, not imprisonment, regulation. A managed biosphere requires boundaries, parameters, safe operating ranges. The moon enforces ranges. It prevents extreme wobble, dampens rotational speed, drives tidal cycles that oxygenate and circulate oceans. We assume this is cosmic luck, but if you imagine Earth as a complex machine, the moon looks less like a decorative accessory and more like a governor. Governors do not create engines, they prevent them from tearing themselves apart. And here is the quiet tension. If something is stabilizing you, it is also constraining you. Is that protection or limitation? The answer depends on perspective. Okay, this is where it starts sounding dramatic. Containment can mean prison, or it can mean safety rail. And the moon absolutely keeps Earth more stable than it might otherwise be. That's supported by planetary science. The jump to intentional containment is speculative, but here is why people are drawn to it. Humans look at systems and ask who designed them. Sometimes the answer is natural processes over billions of years. Sometimes the pattern just feels too clean. I'm not saying the moon is a cosmic babysitter, but if it is, it's doing a very good job, and that is mildly unsettling. The hollow core as reactor. Now, we return to the word that started this entire conversation: hollow. Modern lunar science does not describe the moon as an empty shell. Data from seismic readings, gravitational mappings, and orbital missions indicate a crust, mantle, and a small core. But the idea of internal cavities has lingered for decades. Early Apollo seismic interpretations suggested regions of lower density beneath the surface. That does not mean vast empty chambers, but it does mean the Moon's interior is not uniform. It is layered, fractured, complex. And here is where the speculation takes shape. The Moon absorbs energy from Earth's rotation through tidal friction. As Earth slows, the Moon drifts away at about 3.8 centimeters per year. Now, energy transfer is measurable and predictable. Physics tells us the energy is converted into orbital momentum and heat within Earth's oceans and crust. But if you imagine the Moon as a structural system rather than a random rock, the transfer looks different. It looks like regulation. Energy flows from Earth to Moon in a continuous exchange, a feedback loop. In engineering, feedback loops stabilize systems. They prevent runaway acceleration. They smooth extremes. Now, take the resonance concept from earlier, a body that vibrates efficiently, a body that interacts gravitationally and mechanically. Even without being hollow in the science fiction sense, the Moon functions like a massive counterweight and energy moderator. So, when fringe theorists talk about a hollow core acting as a reactor, it's less about literal machinery and more about metaphor. A reactor processes energy. The Moon processes energy. The question is not whether there are engines inside. The question is whether we are looking at a natural object performing a mechanical role, and whether that role is accidental or structural. Well, let's be clear. There's no credible scientific evidence of alien generators inside the Moon. The tidal energy transfer is fully explained by gravitational physics. It's not mysterious. But here is where the story remains compelling. When you frame Earth and the Moon as a coupled system exchanging energy in a predictable way, it starts to feel engineered, even if it's not. Nature builds feedback systems all the time. Stars regulate fusion. Ecosystems regulate populations. So, is the Moon a reactor? No. Is it part of a planetary energy exchange loop? Absolutely. And that loop is elegant, almost suspiciously elegant. The Silent Protocol. In 1969, humans stepped onto the Moon. Between 1969 and 1972, 12 astronauts walked its surface. Samples were collected, experiments were deployed, seismic stations recorded data. Then we stopped. There are practical explanations: budget cuts, shifting political priorities, the immense cost of crewed lunar missions. Space exploration pivoted towards satellites, space stations and robotic probes. But in conspiracy circles, the timing raises eyebrows. If the Moon is central to Earth's stability, why have we not returned with permanent bases until recently? Why did decades pass before serious lunar infrastructure planning resumed? The official answer is economics and logistics. And that is likely true, yet the symbolism lingers. We visited the object that stabilizes our world. We left instruments behind. We measured it, and then we turned our focus elsewhere. Not because it was unimportant, but because we believed we understood it. And here is the tension that fuels theories. If the Moon is part of a regulating system, tampering becomes delicate. There's no evidence that governments discovered hidden machinery or suppressed world-altering secrets. But when something plays such a fundamental role in planetary balance, caution is rational. You do not casually dismantle the counterweight on a spinning machine, even if you're curious what is inside. And now, as new missions plan to return humans to the lunar surface, the story resumes. Not as science fiction, but as exploration, and perhaps as verification. Alright, and this is where the conspiracy brain wants to sprint. Did we stop going because we found something? Well, there's no evidence of that. The historical record points to funding, politics, and Cold War timing. But I will say this: when something is as foundational to Earth's stability as the Moon is, it deserves serious attention. And the fact that we left it largely alone for decades feels strange, even if the explanation is boring. Now, sometimes boring answers are true. Sometimes they are just incomplete. Either way, we are going back soon, and that means this story is not finished. Luck or design? So, now we zoom out. Not to the Moon, not to Earth, but to the system. A planet spinning in darkness, a satellite locked in place, gravity pulling, energy transferring, axis stabilized, oceans rising and falling in rhythm. For 4.5 billion years, this dance has continued with astonishing precision. The Moon stabilizes our tilt, it slows our spin, it drives tides that oxygenate oceans. It shapes ecosystems, It enables total eclipses that line up with breathtaking symmetry. It resonates when struck. It drifts away at a measurable rate, as if following a long-term schedule. Individually, each of these facts has an explanation, and together they form a pattern. And patterns make humans uncomfortable, because when enough stabilizing mechanisms stack together, coincidence begins to look like architecture. Now, mainstream science explains the moon's origin as a giant impact event. A Mars-sized body collides with early Earth. Debris coalesces, and natural satellite forms. It's an elegant theory, supported by models backed by data. But elegance does not erase intrigue. Because even if the moon formed naturally, its role today is undeniable. It regulates, it moderates, it maintains, it behaves less like a passive ornament and more like a component. Now here is the real question. If you discovered a planet in another solar system with a moon that perfectly stabilized its axis, regulated its tides, slowed its rotation into a life-friendly rhythm, and created rare eclipse alignments within a narrow window of time, what would you call that? Lucky or engineered? And we may never find hollow chambers or hidden reactors. We may confirm beyond doubt that everything about the moon is the result of cosmic accident and gravitational inevitability. But until then, one thing remains true. The moon is not just up there, it is involved, it is integrated. It's part of the operating conditions that allow you to sit here breathing, watching this. So, maybe the hollow moon theory is not about alien machinery or secret engines. Maybe it is about perspective. Maybe we've mistaken infrastructure for scenery. And maybe the sky above us is not just a backdrop. It is a system. And systems exist for reasons. The final answer might be simple physics, or it might be something far stranger. Either way, tonight when you step outside and look up, remember this. The pale disk in the sky is not passive, it is participating. And if it ever stopped, everything changes. All right, let's bring this back to Earth. Now, there's no verified evidence that the moon is artificial, no confirmed hollow megastructures, no hidden alien control panels. But the regulating role it plays in Earth's stability is very real. And when you frame it that way, it stops being just a rock and starts looking like a component in a very delicate machine. Now, is that machine natural? Probably. Could it be something more? That is where curiosity lives. And curiosity is healthy. Just maybe do not try to unplug the moon. I think we're all enjoying the current settings. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And if so, why not check this one out on screen at the end? Now, all my episodes are available as a Mysteria Archive podcast, which you can listen to on the YouTube Music app, which is free for podcasts. No subscription required. Happy listening. And if you'd like to support the channel further, I've launched a Patreon site and a YouTube memberships where you can get proper community chat and exclusive content on Mondays. Link in the description below. And as always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel out and I'd really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments below of videos you would like to see next time. Okay, my friends, be safe. And until next time, stay curious.